The winter clung to the village like a curse, its icy fingers tightening around the widow Wang's frail heart. "What we shall eat tomorrow I haven't the slightest idea," she said, her voice trembling as she stood at the door, watching her eldest son Mingli pull his threadbare coat tighter against the morning's chill. The wind howled through the skeletal trees, carrying the bite of snow that had buried their world for months. Her eyes, sunken from hunger, followed him as he trudged into the grey dawn, seeking work that seemed as elusive as warmth itself. "Oh, the gods will provide." "I'll find a few coppers somewhere," Mingli called back, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. His heart, heavy with uncertainty, mirrored the barren field stretching before him. The winter had been merciless, snowdrifts piled high, winds that shrieked like banshees, and cold that seeped into bones. Their home, a crumbling cottage of mud and straw, had borne the brunt of nature's wrath. The roof, sagging under the weight of snow, had caved in weeks ago, leaving a gaping wound open to the elements. A hurricane had followed, tearing down a wall and exposing them to the bitter night air. Mingli, up through the dark hours repairing what he could, had fallen ill with pneumonia, his body racked with fever. Days bled into weeks, and their meager savings dwindled on medicines and thin broths. The shop where he once worked had given his place to another, and now, too weak for heavy labor, he wandered the villages, returning each night with empty hands and a heavier heart. "Bless his good heart," Widow Wang murmured after he'd gone, her voice cracking as she sank onto a stool by the cold hearth. "No mother ever had a better boy. I hope he's right about the gods providing." Her words trailed into a sigh as she glanced at the corner where her pets, Tabby the cat and Blackfoot the dog, lay curled together, their ribs stark against their matted fur. "It's been worse these past weeks," she said, half to herself, half to the animals. "My stomach's as empty as a rich man's brain. Even the rats have fled this place, and poor Tabby and Blackfoot are starving." Her words stirred a faint response. A pitiful mew from Tabby, a low whimper from Blackfoot, their eyes dull with hunger as they huddled for warmth. A sharp rap at the gate startled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, her voice wary. The door creaked open, revealing an old priest, his bald head gleaming like polished stone in the dim light. His robes, though worn, were clean, and his eyes held a quiet kindness that unsettled her. "Sorry, friend, but we have nothing," she said quickly, assuming he sought alms. "We've lived on scraps and scrapings these 2 weeks. Once, when my husband lived, our cat was so fat she couldn't climb to the roof. Now look at her, barely a shadow. I'm sorry, priest, but you see how it is." The priest raised a hand, his expression serene. "I seek no alms," he said, his voice steady as a river. "I've come to help. The gods have heard your son's prayers, seen his devotion. He has served you faithfully, even through his illness, and now, when he's too weak to work, they wish to reward his virtue. You too have been a good mother, and I bring a gift for you both." Widow Wang's brow furrowed, her lips parting in disbelief. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling with suspicion. "Have you come to mock our misery?" The priest shook his head, his smile unwavering. From his sleeve, he drew a small object that glinted in the weak light. A golden beetle, no larger than a coin, intricately carved with delicate wings. "This," he said, holding it out, "is no ordinary trinket. It holds a magic greater than you can imagine, a gift from the god of filial conduct." She took it, her fingers trembling as she examined its shimmering surface. "It'll fetch a good price," she murmured, already calculating how many days of millet it might buy. "Thank you, priest, for your kindness." "No," he said firmly, his eyes locking onto hers. "You must not sell it. This beetle has the power to fill your stomachs for as long as you live." Her eyes widened, her breath catching. "What?" "Listen well," he continued. "When you hunger, place this beetle in a kettle of boiling water, and speak the names of the foods you desire, repeating them over and over. In 3 minutes, lift the lid, and your meal will be there, steaming hot, cooked to perfection." "May I try it now?" she asked, her voice eager, almost childlike. "When I am gone, he replied, and with a nod, he stepped back into the cold, the gate creaking shut behind him. The widow wasted no time. She shuffled to the hearth, her hands shaking as she kindled a fire with the last of their twigs. The kettle hissed as water boiled, and she dropped the golden beetle inside, her voice trembling as she chanted, "Dumplings, dumplings, come to me, I am thin as thin can be. Dumplings, dumplings, smoking hot, dumplings, dumplings, fill the pot." The words felt foolish on her tongue, but desperation drove her to repeat them, her eyes fixed on the rising steam. 3 minutes crawled by, each second heavy with doubt. Could the priest have spoken true? Her heart pounded as she gripped the kettle's lid, her fingers burning against the hot metal. She lifted it, and a cloud of steam enveloped her face. When it cleared, she gasped. There, bobbing in the bubbling water, was a pot brimming with pork dumplings, their skins glistening, their aroma rich and savory. She plucked one out, burning her fingers, and bit into it. It was perfect, tender, juicy, better than any she'd ever tasted. She ate, until her stomach ached, laughing through tears, as she tossed dumplings to Tabby and Blackfoot, who devoured them with greedy delight. "Good fortune has come at last," Blackfoot whispered to Tabby as they sprawled in a patch of sunlight outside, their bellies full for the first time in months. "I couldn't have lasted another week without running off. No use questioning the gods." Tabby purred, her eyes half closed. "Let's just enjoy it, old friend." Widow Wang's heart swelled at the thought of Ming Li's return. "Poor boy," she said, stroking the beetle fondly. "How surprised he'll be." All this because of his goodness to his old mother. When Ming Li trudged through the gate that evening, his face was shadowed with defeat. Another day of fruitless searching had left him hollow. The widow saw the weight in his eyes, and clapped her hands. "Come, lad, clear that gloom from your face. The gods have been kind, and I'll show you how your devotion has been rewarded." She bustled to the kettle, dropping the beetle into fresh water, and stoking the fire. Ming Li watched, his brow creasing with worry. Had hunger driven her mad? He glanced at Blackfoot, who licked his hand with a knowing look, and at Tabby, who leaped onto a bench, purring loudly. "Mother," he began, but she waved him silent. "Sit down and eat these dumplings while they're hot," she said, setting a steaming platter before him. He blinked, certain his ears deceived him, but there they were. Pork dumplings, his favorite, piled high and fragrant. "Eat," she urged, "and ask no questions." He obeyed, his chopsticks moving swiftly, each bite a marvel of flavor. He ate until he could eat no more, his mother watching with a joy that warmed the cold cottage. At last, she held out the golden beetle. "Here, son, my treasure." He took it, turning it over in his hands. "What rich man's fairy has filled our hands with silver?" "No fairy, but a priest," she laughed, and recounted the strange visit, the beetle's magic, and the feast it had conjured. Ming Li listened, his doubt giving way to wonder, as she set the leftover dumplings on the floor for Tabby and Blackfoot, a sight he'd never seen in their years of scarcity. Thus began a season of plenty. The beetle's magic never failed, producing bird nest soup, shark's fins, and delicacies they'd never dreamed of tasting. Ming Li's strength returned, his cheeks filling out, though he grew idle, for work was no longer necessary. Tabby and Blackfoot grew sleek, their coats glossy, their eyes bright with contentment. But pride, as the ancients warn, courts sorrow. The Wangs, flush with their newfound wealth, began inviting friends and relatives to share their feasts, eager to display their bounty. One day, Mr. and Mrs. Chu, neighbors from a distant village, joined them. The couple marveled at the spread: roast duck, steamed fish, rice fragrant with lotus. They left with full stomachs, but Mrs. Chu's sharp eyes had caught something more. "It's the best meal I've ever had," Mr. Chu said, as they entered their own ramshackle home. "And I know its secret," his wife replied, her voice low with excitement. "I saw Widow Wang pull a golden ornament from the pot and hide it in a cupboard. She was muttering about pork and dumplings as she stirred the fire. It's a charm, I'm sure of it." "A charm?" Mr. Chu's eyes narrowed. "Why do others get all the luck? We're doomed to starve while they feast." Why not borrow it for a few days? Mrs. Chew suggested, her tone sly. Just until we put some meat on our bones. We'll return it, of course. Mr. Chew hesitated. They guard it closely, no doubt. The house is small and they're always home now that Ming Li doesn't work. Stealing from a beggar is harder than from a king. Luck is with us, she countered, clapping her hands. They're going to the temple fair this afternoon, I heard Widow Wang remind Ming Li. I'll slip in while they're gone and borrow the charm from the cupboard. What about Blackfoot? She scoffed. He's too fat to do more than roll over. If they return early, I'll say I came looking for my lost hairpin. Mr. Chew nodded reluctantly. Fine, but we're borrowing, not stealing. The Wangs have been good to us, and we've just dined at their table. Mrs. Chew's plan unfolded with cunning precision. While the Wangs were at the fair, she crept into their cottage, her steps silent. Blackfoot barely stirred, and Tabby only blinked before returning to her nap. The cupboard yielded the beetle, and Mrs. Chew was back home within the hour, gleefully showing her prize to her husband. When the Wangs returned, expecting a hot supper, the widow's joy turned to ash. She checked the cupboard, her hands trembling, then checked again, refusing to believe the beetle was gone. The cottage became a storm of overturned stools and scattered rags, as she and Ming Li searched in vain. Tears streamed down her face as the truth sank in. Their treasure was lost. Hunger returned, sharper for the memory of plenty. The scraps and scrapings they'd once endured now seemed a cruel mockery after the beetle's feasts. Tabby and Blackfoot grew gaunt once more, their eyes accusing as they curled together in the cold. The Wangs' hearts ached, not just for their own suffering, but for the betrayal of trust that had stripped them of their miracle. But if the widow and her son were sad over the loss of the good meals, the two pets were even more so. They were reduced to beggary and had to go forth daily upon the streets in search of stray bones and refuse that decent dogs and cats turned up their noses at. One day, after this period of starvation had been going on for some time, Whitehead began suddenly to frisk about in great excitement. "Whatever is the matter with you?" growled Blackfoot. "Are you mad from hunger, or have you caught another flea?" "I was just thinking over our affairs, and now I know the cause of all our trouble." "Do you indeed?" sneered Blackfoot. "Yes, I do indeed, and you'd better think twice before you mock me, for I hold your future in my paw, as you will very soon see." "Well, you needn't get angry about nothing. What wonderful discovery have you made, that every rat has one tail? First of all, are you willing to help me bring good fortune back to our family?" "Of course I am." "Don't be silly," barked the dog, wagging his tail joyfully at the thought of another good dinner. Surely, I will do anything you like if it will bring Dame Fortune back again." "All right, here is the plan. There has been a thief in the house who has stolen our mistress's golden beetle. You remember all our big dinners that came from the pot? Well, every day I saw our mistress take a little golden beetle out of the black box and put it into the pot. One day she held it up before me, saying, 'Look, Puss, there is the cause of all our happiness. Don't you wish it was yours?' Then she laughed, and put it back into the box that stays in the cupboard." "Is that true?" questioned Blackfoot. "Why didn't you say something about it before? You remember the day Mr. and Mrs. Chew were here, and how Mrs. Chew returned in the afternoon after Master and Mistress had gone to the fair? I saw her, out of the tail of my eye, go to that very black box and take out the golden beetle. I thought it curious, but never dreamed she was a thief. Alas, I was wrong. She took the beetle, and if I am not mistaken, she and her husband are now enjoying the feasts that belong to us." "Let's claw them," growled Blackfoot, gnashing his teeth. "That would do no good," counseled the other, "for they would be sure to come out best in the end. We want the beetle back, that's the main thing. We'll leave revenge to human beings, it is none of our business." "What do you suggest?" said Blackfoot. "I am with you through thick and thin. Let's go to the Chew house and make off with the beetle." "Alas that I am not a cat," moaned Blackfoot. "If we go there I couldn't get inside, for robbers always keep their gates well locked. If I were like you, I could scale the wall." It is the first time in all my life I ever envied a cat. We will go together, continued Whitehead. I will ride on your back when we are fording the river, and you can protect me from strange animals. When we get to the Chew house, I will climb over the wall and manage the rest of the business myself. Only you must wait outside to help me to get home with the prize. No sooner arranged than done. The companions set out that very night on their adventure. They crossed the river as the cat had suggested, and Blackfoot really enjoyed the swim, for, as he said, it took him back to his puppyhood, while the cat did not get a single drop of water on her face. It was midnight when they reached the Chew house. Just wait till I return, purred Whitehead in Blackfoot's ear. With a mighty spring she reached the top of the mud wall, and then jumped down to the inside court. While she was resting in the shadow, trying to decide just how to go about her work, a slight rustling attracted her attention, and pop! One giant spring, one stretch out of the claws, and she had caught a rat that had just come out of his hole for a drink and a midnight walk. Now Whitehead was so hungry that she would have made short work of this tempting prey if the rat had not opened its mouth and, to her amazement, begun to talk in good cat dialect. "Pray, good puss, not so fast with your sharp teeth. Kindly be careful with your claws. Don't you know it is the custom now to put prisoners on their honor? I will promise not to run away." "Pooh, what honor has a rat? Most of us haven't much, I grant you, but my family was brought up under the roof of Confucius, and there we picked up so many crumbs of wisdom that we are exceptions to the rule. If you will spare me, I will obey you for life, in fact, will be your humble slave." Then, with a quick jerk, freeing itself, "See, I am loose now, but honor holds me as if I were tied, and so I make no further attempt to get away." "Much good it would do you," purred Whitehead, her fur crackling noisily, and her mouth watering for a taste of rat steak. "However, I am quite willing to put you to the test. First, answer a few polite questions, and I will see if you're a truthful fellow. What kind of food is your master eating now, that you should be so round and plump when I am thin and scrawny?" "Oh, we have been in luck lately, I can tell you. Master and mistress feed on the fat of the land, and of course we hangers-on get the crumbs. But this is a poor tumble-down house. How can they afford such eating? That is a great secret, but as I am in honor bound to tell you, here goes. My mistress has just obtained in some manner or other a fairy's charm. She stole it from our place," hissed the cat. "I will claw her eyes out if I get the chance. Why, we've been fairly starving for want of that beetle. She stole it from us just after she had been an invited guest. What do you think of that for honor, Sir Rat? Were your mistress's ancestors followers of the sage?" Oh, why that explains everything," wailed the rat. "I have often wondered how they got the golden beetle, and yet of course I dared not ask any questions." "No, certainly not. But hark you, friend rat, you get that golden trinket back for me, and I will set you free at once of all obligations. Do you know where she hides it?" "Yes, in a crevice where the wall is broken. I will bring it to you in a jiffy, but how shall we exist when our charm is gone? There will be a season of scanty food, I fear, beggars, fare for all of us." "Live on the memory of your good deed," purred the cat. "It is splendid, you know, to be an honest beggar. Now scoot." "I trust you completely, since your people lived in the home of Confucius. I will wait here for your return." "Ah," laughed Whitehead to herself, "luck seems to be coming our way again." 5 minutes later the rat appeared, bearing the trinket in its mouth. It passed the beetle over to the cat, and then with a whisk was off forever. Its honor was safe, but it was afraid of Whitehead. It had seen the gleam of desire in her green eyes, and the cat might have broken her word if she had not been so anxious to get back home, where her mistress could command the wonderful kettle once more to bring forth food. The two adventurers reached the river just as the sun was rising above the eastern hills. "Be careful," cautioned Blackfoot, as the cat leaped upon his back for her ride across the stream. "Be careful not to forget the treasure. In short, remember that even though you are a female, it is necessary to keep your mouth closed till we reach the other side." "Thanks, but I don't think I need your advice," replied Whitehead, picking up the beetle and leaping onto the dog's back, but alas! Just as they were nearing the farther shore, the excited cat forgot her wisdom for a moment. A fish suddenly leaped out of the water directly under her nose. It was too great a temptation. Snap! Went her jaws in a vain effort to land the scaly treasure, and the golden beetle sank to the bottom of the river. "There!" said the dog angrily. "What did I tell you? Now all our trouble has been in vain, all on account of your stupidity." For a time there was a bitter dispute, and the companions called each other some very bad names, such as Turtle and Rabbit. Just as they were starting away from the river, disappointed and discouraged, a friendly frog, who had by chance heard their conversation, offered to fetch the treasure from the bottom of the stream. No sooner said than done, and after thanking this accommodating animal profusely, they turned homeward once more. When they reached the cottage, the door was shut, and bark as he would, Blackfoot could not persuade his master to open it. There was the sound of loud wailing inside. "Mistress is broken-hearted," whispered the cat. "I will go to her and make her happy." So saying, she sprang lightly through a hole in the paper window, which, alas, was too small and too far from the ground for the faithful dog to enter. A sad sight greeted the gaze of Whitehead. The son was lying on the bed unconscious, almost dead for want of food, while his mother, in despair, was rocking backwards and forwards, wringing her wrinkled hands and crying at the top of her voice for someone to come and save them. "Here I am, mistress," cried Whitehead, "and here is the treasure you are weeping for. I have rescued it and brought it back to you." The widow, wild with joy at sight of the beetle, seized the cat in her scrawny arms and hugged the pet tightly to her bosom. "Breakfast, son, breakfast! Wake up from your swoon. Fortune has come again. We are saved from starvation." Soon a steaming hot meal was ready, and you may well imagine how the old woman and her son, heaping praises upon Whitehead, filled the beast's platter with good things, but never a word did they say of the faithful dog, who remained outside sniffing the fragrant odors and waiting in sad wonder. For all this time the artful cat had said nothing of Blackfoot's part in the rescue of the golden beetle. At last, when breakfast was over, slipping away from the others, Whitehead jumped out through the hole in the window. "Oh, my dear Blackfoot," she began laughingly, "you should have been inside to see what a feast they gave me. Mistress was so delighted at my bringing back her treasure that she could not give me enough to eat, nor say enough kind things about me. Too bad, old fellow, that you are hungry. You'd better run out into the street and hunt up a bone." Maddened by the shameful treachery of his companion, the enraged dog sprang upon the cat, and in a few seconds had shaken her to death. "So dies the one who forgets a friend and who loses honor," he cried sadly, as he stood over the body of his companion. Rushing out into the street, he proclaimed the treachery of Whitehead to the members of his tribe, at the same time advising that all self-respecting dogs should from that time onwards make war upon the feline race. The days that followed the theft of the golden beetle were a grim return to want for Widow Wang and her son Ming Li, but for their pets, Tabby, called Whitehead in her youth, and Blackfoot, the suffering was sharper still. The cottage, once filled with the savory aromas of conjured feasts, now reeked of damp straw and despair. The two animals, reduced to scavenging, roamed the village streets, their once glossy coats matted with grime, as they nosed through refuse for scraps that even the meanest strays would spurn. Their ribs jutted beneath thin fur, and their eyes, once bright with contentment, now glinted with a hollow hunger. The market square offered little, rotten cabbage leaves, fish bones stripped clean, the occasional crust flung from a merchant's stall. Each day they returned to the cottage, their bellies growling, their spirits worn thin by the relentless cold and the memory of better days. One grey morning, as they lay curled in a corner of the yard, Whitehead suddenly leaped up, her tail twitching with a spark of energy that startled Blackfoot from his listless doze. She pranced in a tight circle, her green eyes gleaming with purpose. "What's got into you?" Blackfoot growled, his voice rough from disuse. He lifted his head, his ears drooping. "Are you mad with hunger, or has another flea taken up residence in that scruffy pelt of yours?" Whitehead's whiskers quivered, as she fixed him with a sharp stare. "Mock me if you will, but I've been thinking, and I've unraveled the cause of our misery." Blackfoot snorted, his breath clouding in the chill air. "Oh, have you now? What grand discovery is this, that every rat has one tail and every dog one empty stomach?" Whitehead's tail lashed, her fur bristling with indignation. "Mind your tongue, Blackfoot, or you'll regret it. I hold our future in my paw, and you'd do well to listen before you sneer. I know what stole our plenty." The dog's ears pricked, though skepticism lingered in his dark eyes. "Go on then, enlighten me." "Are you willing to help me restore our family's fortune?" she asked, her voice low and urgent, her claws flexing against the frozen earth. "Of course I am," Blackfoot barked, his tail thumping despite his weariness. "Don't be daft. I'd do anything to bring Dame Fortune back. Anything for another bowl of those steaming dumplings. Tell me your plan, and I'm with you." Whitehead sat back, her eyes narrowing as she recounted her revelation. "There's a thief in our midst, Blackfoot. The golden beetle, our mistress's treasure, the source of all those feasts from the pot. It's been stolen. Every day, I watched her take it from the black box in the cupboard and drop it into the boiling water. Once, she held it up to me, laughing, and said, 'Look, Puss, this is the cause of all our happiness. Don't you wish it was yours?' Then she tucked it away. But on the day Mr. and Mrs. Chu dined with us, I saw something. Mrs. Chu came back that afternoon, while our master and mistress were at the temple fair. I caught her, out of the corner of my eye, creeping to the cupboard. She opened the black box and took the beetle. I thought it odd, but never dreamed she'd steal it. Now I know, she's the thief, and she and her husband are feasting on what's rightfully ours." Blackfoot's hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "That snake! Let's tear into them, claw and fang, I say." Whitehead shook her head, her whiskers twitching with disdain. "Clawing them won't bring the beetle back. They'd likely come out on top, and we'd be no better off. No, we want the beetle itself. Leave revenge to humans. It's not our place." "Then what do you propose?" Blackfoot asked, his ears twitching with impatience. "I'm with you, through thick and thin." "We go to the Chu house," Whitehead said, her voice steady as she paced a tight circle. "We take back the beetle." Blackfoot's tail drooped. "Alas, I'm no cat. Their gate will be locked tight. Thieves guard their spoils. If I could scale walls like you, I'd be over in a heartbeat. For the first time in my life, I envy your kind." Whitehead's eyes gleamed with a cunning plan. "We'll go together. I'll ride your back across the river to keep my paws dry, and you'll guard me from stray dogs or worse. At the Chu house, I'll climb the wall and handle the rest. You wait outside to help me carry the prize home." The dog's tail wagged, a spark of hope kindling in his chest. "Agreed. When do we start?" "Tonight," Whitehead purred, her voice a conspiratorial whisper, under cover of darkness. That very night, they set out, the moon a thin sliver casting faint shadows across the frost-crusted fields. The river lay before them, its surface glinting like polished obsidian. Whitehead leaped onto Blackfoot's back, her claws digging lightly into his fur as he waded into the icy current. "Hold steady," she muttered, her tail flicking as the water lapped at his flanks. Blackfoot, despite the cold biting his legs, grinned. "This takes me back to my puppy days," he said, his breath puffing in the air. "Not a drop on you, eh, Whitehead?" "Not a one," she replied, her voice smug as she perched high and dry. They reached the Chu house at midnight, its mud walls looming in the dark. The village was silent, save for the distant bark of a dog, and the rustle of wind, through bare branches. Whitehead crouched at Blackfoot's side, her eyes scanning the wall. "Wait here," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "I'll be back with the prize." With a graceful leap she scaled the wall, her claws finding purchase in the crumbling mud. She landed softly in the inner courtyard, her body low as she melted into the shadows. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meat, a cruel reminder of their lost feasts. As she crept toward the house, a faint rustle stopped her, a rat, plump and unwary, emerging from a hole for a midnight stroll. In a flash, Whitehead pounced, her claws pinning the creature before it could squeak. The rat, to her astonishment, spoke in a clear, desperate voice. "Mercy, good puss! Spare my life! Don't you know it's the custom to put prisoners on their honor? I swear I won't flee." Whitehead's fur crackled, her mouth watering at the thought of a meal. "Honor? From a rat? That's a laugh." "My family was raised under the roof of Confucius," the rat squeaked, its eyes wide with fear. "We've gleaned crumbs of wisdom, making us exceptions among our kind. Spare me, and I'll serve you for life." With a deft twist, it freed itself but stood still, trembling. "See, I'm loose, but my honor binds me. I won't run." Whitehead's claws flexed, but curiosity stayed her hunger.
"Prove your worth, then."
"Answer me this. What do your masters eat that you're so plump while I'm skin and bones?" The rat's whiskers twitched. "Oh, we've been in luck lately. Master and mistress feast on the fat of the land, and we rats get the scraps, juicy ones too." "In this hovel," Whitehead hissed, her tail lashing. "How do they afford such luxury?" "It's a secret," the rat said, then hesitated. "But I'm honor bound to tell you, my mistress has a fairy's charm, a golden beetle. She uses it to conjure feasts." "She stole it," Whitehead spat, her eyes blazing. "That beetle belongs to my mistress. Mrs. Chu took it after dining at our table." "What honor is that, rat? Were her ancestors followers of the sage?" The rat squealed, its tiny body quaking. "Oh, that explains it. I wondered how they got it but dared not ask. Please, don't harm me, I'll help you." Whitehead's ears twitched. "Get me that beetle, and I'll free you from all debts." "Do you know where it's hidden?" "In a crevice in the broken wall," the rat said eagerly. "I'll fetch it in a moment, but what'll we do when it's gone? We'll be back to scraps." "Live on the memory of your good deed," Whitehead purred, her voice laced with mockery. "Honest beggary is noble, is it not? Now go, and don't betray me. I trust you, raised as you were in the shadow of Confucius." The rat scurried off, returning moments later with the golden beetle clasped in its jaws. It dropped the trinket at Whitehead's paws, and vanished into the dark, fearing her hunger might outweigh her word. Whitehead seized the beetle, her heart racing with triumph, and scaled the wall back to Blackfoot. They reached the river as dawn's first light touched the hills. "Hold tight to that treasure," Blackfoot cautioned as Whitehead climbed onto his back. "And keep your mouth shut this time, female or not." "I need no advice from you," Whitehead retorted, gripping the beetle in her teeth. But as they neared the far shore, a fish leaped from the water, its silver scales flashing under Whitehead's nose. Instinct overtook her. She snapped at it, and the beetle slipped from her jaws, sinking into the river's depths. "You fool!" Blackfoot roared, shaking water from his fur as they scrambled onto the bank. "I warned you! All our work, wasted because of your greed."
"It was a fish."
Whitehead hissed, her fur bristling. "You'd have done the same, you lumbering turtle." "Turtle, you witless rabbit," Blackfoot snarled, his teeth bared. Their voices rose in a bitter quarrel, each blaming the other for their loss. As they stood, dejected and snarling, a frog croaked from the reeds. "I heard your plight," it said, its eyes bulging. "I'll dive for your treasure." Before they could respond, it plunged into the water, returning with the beetle in its webbed feet. They thanked the frog profusely, their quarrel forgotten, and turned homeward. At the cottage the gate was barred, and Blackfoot's barks drew no response. From within came the sound of anguished wails. "Mistress is broken-hearted," Whitehead whispered, her ears flattening. "I'll go to her." She slipped through a tear in the paper window, too small and high for Blackfoot. Inside, the scene was dire. Mingli lay on his pallet, pale and still, his breath shallow from starvation. Widow Wang rocked beside him, her wrinkled hands wringing as she sobbed, "Someone save us! My son is dying." "Here I am, mistress," Whitehead mewed, dropping the beetle at her feet. "Your treasure is restored." The widow's eyes widened, her sobs choking off as she seized the cat in her arms, hugging her tightly. "Bless you, Whitehead! Breakfast, son, breakfast! Wake up! We're saved!" She hurried to the kettle, chanting the familiar words as the beetle worked its magic. Soon, a steaming meal filled the air with its aroma. and Mingli stirred, his strength returning with each bite. The widow heaped praise on Whitehead, filling her platter with choice morsels, but not a word did she spare for Blackfoot, who sat outside, his nose pressed to the gate, sniffing the feast he could not share. Whitehead, basking in her mistress's adoration, slipped out through the window. "Oh, Blackfoot," she purred, her voice dripping with mockery, "you should have seen the feast they gave me. Mistress was so thrilled, she couldn't stop praising me. Such a pity you're still hungry. Run along and find a bone in the street." Blackfoot's eyes blazed with betrayal. "You treacherous creature," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I carried you across the river, stood guard while you stole the prize, and now you claim all the glory." With a snarl, he lunged, his jaws closing around Whitehead's neck. In moments, she lay lifeless at his feet. "So dies one who forgets a friend, and loses honor," Blackfoot said, his voice heavy with sorrow. He fled to the village, proclaiming Whitehead's treachery to every dog he met, urging them to wage war on cats henceforth. And so, the ancient feud between dog and cat was born, rooted in a betrayal over a golden beetle. Aaron looked and saw a mix of true support, some who were simply accepting, and Clifford Barrymore who was staring defiantly but keeping his mouth shut. "Thank you all for coming. The Regis will close the assembly." Gerard turned his head to glance at his mother as she took a step forward. "Thank you all for coming and bearing witness. This assembly is closed." The ascending king and the Regis turned to leave through the back entrance, as everyone else stood silent. Captain Aaron watched as people left the hall after that. Barrymore stormed out, followed closely by Lady Alicia. Gerard and Malona entered the royal bedroom quietly. Without a word, Gerard sat in a chair, and Melina sat on the bed. They just stayed there in silence for a bit. It was Gerard who spoke up first. "I haven't cried yet. Is that weird?" His voice sounded hollow. Melina shook her head. "No, it's not strange. You will when you're ready." Her voice was warm, but sad. "Have you?" he asked. They looked at each other and he saw soft tears in her eyes. Gerard got up, and quickly took a seat next to his stepmother. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she rested her head on his. Gerard tried to say something but no words came. After a minute that was awkward for Gerard, and not for Melina, there was a knock on the door. As Gerard cleared his throat and removed his arm, the guard called through the door. "Majesties, Captain Aaron wishes to speak with you." "Enter," Melina called out with a clear voice. She wiped away her last tear as the door opened. "Sorry to interrupt," Captain Aaron began. Melina held up her hand as she stood, silencing him. Gerard stood as well as the door was pulled shut behind. "Aaron," Melina began softly once the door was shut, "you have been my best friend for most of my life. You played a big part in making the assembly a success. You are captain of the guard of Caledonia Castle, our home. Never be sorry for needing to speak to either of us." Gerard was surprised at how harsh her words sounded until he saw the look on their faces. Aaron chuckled softly and replied with a soft grin. "Well, Regis, I apologize for being sorry. It won't happen again." His retort earned him one small laugh from Melina, as she gestured for everyone to sit down at a small table. "But seriously, Aaron, thank you." Getting everyone to play along helped a lot. There was honest gratitude in her voice. "I learned a long time ago to trust you when you ask for a favor, but did you see the look on Barrymore's face when he realized what was happening?" Melina smiled and stayed silent, so Gerard answered. "I did. He was furious. I guess he really did want to be regent." Gerard wasn't sure if he should laugh or worry, and found he was doing a little of both. "You can leave him to me to deal with," Melina reassured him. Gerard nodded. "You need to get ready to find your sister." "I will help keep an eye on things here, my future king. You don't need to worry," Arenaldo reassured Gerard. "All right," Gerard nodded. "I guess that's the plan. I will trust you two to keep things settled here, and I will go find Serena." "Oh, have Sayet sent a message to Kier and the elves about what happened?" he asked Melina. "Not yet," she shook her head. "You should write letters for us to deliver." With everything addressed, all three left, to address their various duties. Just as the royals and their captain were ending their meeting, Clifford Barrymore was starting a meeting of his own. "How dare they deceive me?" he fumed, pacing the length of the small guest study. Captain Aldir and Lady Alicia stays sitting and silent. Malachi, who was leaning against the wall, was the one to reply. Melina is a Shaima, but even I did not expect this kind of betrayal. She's a traitor, Bermol seethed, a traitor who is working with the elves to gain power for herself. He suddenly turned towards the other three. We can't allow this to stand. We have to find a way to take the throne away from her. The words hung in the air as he measured their effect. No one recoiled, and Clifford realized that 3 hungry smiles were watching him, ready to follow him. Malachi, he turns to the former High Advisor. Yes, my lord, he replied with anticipation. My household has need of a strategist, and if I recall, you have need of a title and a lord who will appreciate your talents. He left the idea unfinished. Malachi smiled a cold, dark smile. My lord, your strategist looks forward to serving you. It feels good to be on our own lands again, Siest said as Kia walked up. Captain Kanan and Shin helped them onto their horses, then got on their own. How were they after hearing your story? It could have gone worse, Kia responded quietly. If their queen had not walked into the fight to stop it, there is no way we would convince the official scribe of anything. We would have a war on our hands if not for her, Kanin added. With a sigh, Kia nodded her agreement. Well, Shin interrupted as he rode up, we're safe now either way. I've met the squad leader in charge right now, Philin, and he says there hasn't been any human sighted for a couple weeks now. Shin never had to force his smiles, and even now they were still contagious. Kia accepted their optimism in spite of herself. True enough. We have undeniable proof that their rulers wish for peace. We can find a way to work past the humans who still fear us. The rest of her troop had finished mounting fresh horses, and they rode off at a relaxed pace. After a few moments, Siest leaned over and said, I'm sure their son Gerard will be furious when he learns you are in danger. I'm sure he wants peace like he told me, she replied, mostly to avoid getting flustered. I'm sure that's the only reason. Siest agreed with obvious sarcasm. It won her a scowl from Kia that quickly turned into the two of them laughing a bit. They saw Shin waving to the guard squad behind them, and continued on their journey to report to Kia's father. Behind them, Philin waved and watched the party until they were out of sight before riding off. After about a 10-minute ride, he came to a gentle hill that was covered with stones on the south side. He tied his horse down on the east side, so it could rest and eat some grass, and moved to the south side. He cupped his hands together and made a bird call, then sat down and waited. After a few seconds he got up and followed a different bird noise into the trees. Suddenly a voice spoke softly behind him. Humans believe in the Old Ones, the low voice said. The Old Ones are a myth, Aethys replied. They are indeed, the voice said smugly. Philin turned and saw Hitman. They shared cold smiles as Hitman nodded his head to the side. They started walking as he started talking. Prince Gerard suspects us, and he sent a messenger to warn your king. What? Kon hun alo. Grotama Inman reported. He's alone. I know, Philin countered. One of us spotted him approaching. He should cross the border up north in about an hour. Well, we can't let him warn the king now, can we? They shared a cold laugh. Philin handed Hitman a map. He took it, and turned into the forest. Philin got back on his horse and rode to his squad. They would need to deal with that messenger quickly, before he accidentally caught up to the half-breed's party,